Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Alec, and I will be working here in the background to help answer any general or technical questions that you have. And your HRCI and SHRM certification codes for today's webinar will appear in the upper right-hand corner in that certification box after the required watch time has elapsed.
Welcome to this workforce webinar. In a growing firm, human resources is often trying to maintain order in an environment of chaos. From recruiting and onboarding through process management and cultural changes, HR is the department that experiences a company's growing pains most acutely. But if HR is constantly putting out fires, how can the staff focus on its greater mission of serving the evolving workforce and strengthening the company? This webinar will examine some of the troubling challenges, emerging trends, and truly innovative ideas that are transforming HR today. Specifically, we will discuss how innovative HR departments are handling workload management challenges, content management challenges, and access management challenges. Today I'm talking to Justin Ullman, the CEO of RhinoDocs. Now, when it comes to document content and information management services, Justin has it in his DNA. He has a rich family history spanning more than 100 years in information management. With an MBA from Loyola University in Chicago and a background in computer programming and technology, Justin combined his generational experience and education to reinvent RhinoDocs to meet the growing demand for enterprise content management, advanced capture, and business process automation challenges. Justin's firm RhinoDocs develops technology solutions for growing businesses that help solve their most complex workflow and content management challenges. The company was founded in 1913 in Peoria. It has evolved from a documents warehouse and management services company to become an innovative force in transformational process automation and enterprise content management. Today, RhinoDocs serves evolving firms with the most technologically advanced cloud-based solutions available in human resources. With that, I'd like to welcome Justin Ullman to the Workforce webinar.
It's great to be here. Excited to talk HR transformation.
Before we dive in, I do have a question about RhinoDocs. Your company has over 100 years of information management experience. Obviously, way back in 1913, your solutions weren't cloud-based. What was the world of RhinoDocs like back then?
Actually, we got our start in physical records management. So we weren't cloud-based, we were warehouse-based and had warehouses in Chicago filled with hundreds of thousands of boxes of documents. And as the needs of those businesses changed, so did we. So today we can fit those warehouses and billions of other pieces of critical information into a cloud solution. So the world, as we all know, certainly has transformed.
Yes, it has. And that leads us to our first topic, workload management.
Right. When we talk to human resources, one of the first issues they bring up is workload. And it's not surprising because the life cycle of every single employee is the responsibility of HR. And we could spend an entire webinar simply talking about recruiting bottlenecks, and that's just the first hurdle. It's onboarding and benefits and training and performance reviews, expense reports, vacations, and offboarding. And if the workload isn't streamlined, it's this recipe for what we call controlled chaos, right? The spinning plates. And the stress of that is even magnified in a growing firm. And that's usually the environment, when we come in. So when we're coming in, we're talking about helping employees get back to being knowledge workers, doing the things they were hired to do. We talk about trying to bring all the information together into a single place with no more fruitless searching, things like automating data entry so it's only done once and applied across the board to the multiple line of business systems. And then real-time management of these processes, giving visibility and transparency, not just in recruiting, but all the key decisions from initial contact, final salary, to the day that they walk into the door for the very first time. And we also want to talk to people about how technology should grow along with the demands of the company and not disrupt HR. We're talking about manually processing information and the time-consuming labor of that. No one wakes up in the morning excited to do data entry, excited to chase paper around the organization. And these process improvement functions allow HR to monitor all these internal activities and are working through where improvement is needed. So the end result of this is greater visibility and transparency and reworking that process and getting better and better and better as they're changing these the daily activities of HR. So here's the bottom line. Right now, there's a talent gap, and we're competing not for good candidates, we're competing for great candidates, and they're difficult to find, and the wages are going up. And all this puts additional pressure on HR. And what we want to do is we want to give HR back the time for strategic work and not paperwork, right? Streamline, give visibility, give transparency, stop using email and phone calls and Excel and what we call sneakernet, meaning I'm walking over to someone else's desk. Do all those things, let knowledge workers be knowledge workers, and be strategic about the work that we're doing and the people we're trying to hire.
Oh, that's the truth, Justin, and it's definitely the case for today's HR departments. And it really does make the case for workflow automation. So, listen, Justin, can you give us an example of how workflow automation has transformed a specific workload challenge faced by HR?
Certainly. Let's focus on everyone's favorite topic, onboarding. So day one is exciting and stressful for a new employee and HR. So here's an infographic I like called the Day One Diaries. It dramatizes all the details an employee has to go through before they ever get started doing the job that they were hired for. And this infographic is pretty accurate because the schedule for onboarding is packed with forms to complete, training to attend, access, security, benefits administration to manage, and introductions to make. But it's critical to get right, and this sets the stage for the relationship between the employee and the company.
That's very true. You know, the Society of Human Resources reported that new employees who participate in a structured orientation program are actually 69% more likely to remain at a company up to 3 years. And obviously, we're just talking about onboarding orientation. It goes far beyond that. It goes to benefits administration, PTO, all the other aspects of HR. So the question, Justin, we have to ask is, how does HR take care of onboarding before day one ever happens?
Right. So when you get this right and you streamlined onboarding, you know, the ID is waiting at the front desk, the equipment's ready, access protocols are confirmed, supplies are in place, forms are completed, the welcome email inbox, training is scheduled, payroll, approvals, all of that's handled. And it streamlines the data entry of this process. So someone's doing this once, it's feeding all the other systems. Also, internally, we have this concept of escalators, right? So if Joe is starting in 3 weeks, the escalators 2 weeks out might send a friendly email that says, Joe, starting in 2 weeks, have you completed your XYZ, your access or your ID? A week out, we might send the slightly more stern letter to say, I see this isn't completed. You have 1 week until Joe gets here. And then 3 days out, we might drop it in their supervisor's queue. And that usually curbs that behavior pretty quickly. But it's all about helping manage the spinning plates, manage the timeline, and not doing it again through email and sneakernet and phone and spreadsheets where there's a lot of guesswork, because today's environment certainly is busy. Everyone has enough on their plate.
That's true, and it's very interesting. So let's shift gears. Let's talk about another HR headache. Content management seems like a hot-button issue of the day, but the information just keeps growing with every new hire or process. So, Justin, what trends in HR have you seen for content management?
So actually, content management, we talk about it these days as information management. So you used to have content and documents on one side of the house and the data on the other side, and it's coming closer together. I mean, it's one thing now. And within HR, what they're doing really touches every department. So it's it's an issue not only for HR, but for legal and finance and operations and management on all levels.
You're definitely right, Justin. Point taken. But, by its very nature, HR actually creates many of its own content management challenges.
Yeah, according to a study by the Human Capital Institute, every employee, there's 30 to 50 unique documents that are created. And so multiply that by every employee in the company, and then you keep creating documents throughout their life at the company, And we're really only really talking about an employee's personal documentation. It's a small fraction of the information that weighs down the entire HR department. We also talk about storing and organizing, filing and destroying paper. We talk again about that email and sneakernet of walking over to someone's desk for a status and the spreadsheets. And then you're searching for these documents in multiple locations and multiple line of business systems, depending on the issue, and multiple platforms and runaround. And you start talking about this concept of what's the source of truth, right? What if we had one place where I could see everyone's information as opposed to 3, 4, 5, 10 different systems? And there's also this security challenge that's presented by this of having to go through information throughout the entire company, and who really owns that information? Should HR own that information? Again, we could have a whole webinar on information governance. But if you think about this starting in HR and owning this process and owning this information and streamlining it, the minute that someone emails a form with personal sensitive information, control is lost. And you can bring in IT, developers, upper management. What's really probably happening is workarounds. And this information flow becomes what I call like these dark documents, dark processes. So you have personal email, right? You have printed documentation. And then the biggest killer of all of this is thumb drives. So as soon as that information and all these paths are available and it's not streamlined, you have this real content management information governance issue.
That's all true. And it's all too familiar to our HR audience. And, the amount of information isn't diminishing at all. As you mentioned, Justin, it's just multiplying exponentially with every new employee. That brings us back to the big question. Can technology help simplify the information management challenge for HR?
So there's like two sides of the coin. You can buy a single HRIS system that does it all if you have that type of budget, or you buy line of business systems for a specific process. And you end up with a lot of line of business systems. User keeps adding information into multiple systems. And then you have this result of that source of truth, systems that don't communicate with each other. In order to complete a transaction, I have multiple logins in multiple systems. And so, it's a balance of between that one single HRIS system, multiple line of business systems, and then, as we keep saying, throw in email and sneakernet and Excel and phone calls, and you can solve it in one of those three ways.
Okay, yeah, I can see it. And it's a mess and for a lot of companies. But how can HR make sure that scenario doesn't really happen? What should our audience look for in a technology solution to handle their information management issues?
Right, so here's 4 points to look for in information, content, data management, right? And let's just call it consolidation. I sometimes refer to it as aggregation if you hear me say that. But in other words, we want one solution to collect, store, share, and transact all in a single location. And what I want to clarify is that the way that I think about technology now is that I want to leverage the existing investment in software, right? The new generation of software lays on top of a lot of these existing systems and content and data and extends this functionality. So the end result is consolidation, but it's not this traditional one system to rule them all. Right, so point 2, let's talk about flexibility. And flexibility when it comes to content and information and data, it's the capacity to manage structured and unstructured content. This is images and text documents and emails and the body of those documents and emails and text, right? That's the unstructured component that traditionally has been very hard to manage. Also, in terms of flexibility, you're going to want to look for a platform that grows with you and one that's flexible enough to adapt and change to the business. Otherwise, it becomes obsolete almost immediately. And what's traditionally happening is you have this system and a process, and you've outgrown it. And it gets so painful that you rip out that system and put the bigger, badder version of that in. Or you can overspend and look to say, what are we going to look like in 3 to 5 years? And let's overspend, and hopefully you get there and grow into a system like that. But I think you should have these systems that grow with you, and they're out there for sure. They're out there. So the third point is about, we call it smarter search, right? So you want technology that operates like leading search engines, not like cumbersome business searches with multiple screens and multiple logins. And we all know what that looks like. So search functions also, we want you to use common terms and natural language search. We want the ability for the system to come back to you and say, did you actually mean this, right? So we don't want complex file names. We don't want difficult terminology, difficult syntax. We want speed and capacity to search millions of files and documents in milliseconds. And here's a quick example. So right now, the search for content at work, it looks like this, right? We've got 3 systems, fields, values, and you enter. I'm sure this looks familiar to everybody. Or worse, your search looks like this, right? It's on the E drive, / they'll never find it, / I'm out of here in 3 months, / I don't even know where it is. But you go home, and searching every day looks like this, right? So we ask the question, why can't searching at work operate this way? And the answer is it can and it should, because you need to find an information management platform that lets you search at work like you do in everyday life. And last but not least, we've got to talk about security. We already talked about that personal information, and everybody knows exactly what we're talking about. But we want really, really granular security for sensitive documents and sensitive data. And I'd recommend finding something that has some Department of Defense certification, because again, it's out there.
You're right, Justin. Security is an interesting point, and it's actually part of our next issue. Right now, we're going to talk about the challenges of access management for today's HR departments. Now, we've probably all heard that HR is making the transition to cloud-based software. In fact, studies have shown that 40% of HR professionals are beginning to explore using cloud-based software because of its accessibility, its cost savings, and its mobility. But the real challenge is finding technology that HR can implement quickly and adopt easily. So, Justin, you develop cloud-based solutions. What insights do you have for HR in this area?
So, we understand HR's concern here. In addition to personal and confidential information, this access is grounded in reality, because these HRIS systems require that you modify your processes to support their standard software workflows. And that's not the way HR technology or cloud-based software is intended to work. The future is going to be dominated by fast, agile companies that are built on fast, agile platforms. And those platforms, it's all about drag and drop, low-code applications, right? So the cloud lends itself to this, I think. And again, it's software that conforms to your processes, not your processes conforming to the software.
Okay, got it. But with that in mind, what should HR departments look for when they make the move to cloud-based technology platforms?
So it's somewhat simple. Let's not forget security, but they should be easy to implement. And this fast speed to use without extensive training or disruptions, this is actually kind of software in general, but usability. Make it easy to use, something that my 5-year-old could use. And we talk about this drag and drop simplicity. You heard me mention low code a minute ago. So configurability as well. We want technology that adapts and works with these current systems. We want a scalable platform that's changing as these companies' needs grow. In HR, you have to deal with regulatory change. That drives a lot of process change. And then you're going to figure out how to do things better. As you grow, your needs change, right? So that's why we want this process to not work as the software works, but let the software work to these changing processes and changing regulatory environment. And don't put yourself in a position where it gets so painful that you have to rip out what you have and put in the bigger, better version of this. So we should also talk about cost in cloud technology, which I've heard debated, but very simply, there's no hardware to purchase to expand. There's no need for upgrades, changing systems maintenance. There's no sort of custom development that is required. And a softer piece of it is the flexibility of having this in the cloud and leveraging the cloud sort of minimizes the opportunity cost or, lost opportunities in having to deal with on-site systems and sort of a more rigid infrastructure of on-site systems. And lastly, I think I said this first, but we should always mention this 2, 3, maybe 4 times, is security, right? So in the cloud, you want to talk about this very, very granular security for sensitive documents and sensitive information. I think we talked about Department of Defense certified. You should ask for it because, again, it exists out there. So security is key to HR departments because nobody wants their company's name in the paper.
Okay, well, very helpful. Thank you, sir. And with that, we've actually reached the end of this Workforce webinar. I'd like to thank Justin Ullman for RhinoDocs for sharing his expertise.
My pleasure.
Okay, Justin, so where can our audience go to learn more about your HR technology solutions?
You can visit our website at rhinodocs.com. It's where you can find our product we call Worklight. It's the only solution that combines a new generation of enterprise information management software and award-winning workflow software. And you can schedule a free HR consultation with some of our HR technology experts from RhinoDocs.
All right. All right, Justin. Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate the presentation. And I want to thank our sponsors today at RhinoDocs. But mostly, I do want to thank all of you in the audience for your participation and your attendance. For those of you who've asked, you can find materials from today's webinar and all other Workforce webinars archived at events.workforce.com. or click on the Workforce icon at the bottom of your screen. Also, please take this time to note your HRCI and SHRM certification codes. If you have been in here since the start of the presentation, you should see 2 codes at the upper right-hand corner of your screen in the certification box. One is for HRCI and the other is for SHRM. Have a great day, everybody.